They told you it was coincidence. They told you it was fatigue, stress, a mood that would pass. But something else found you tonight, a quiet, impossible gravity that did not arrive by chance. It threaded itself through the margins of your life, a repeated number on the clock, a face in a crowd that felt like a mirror, a sentence in a book that detached from the page and lodged in your chest. This message found you because some things in the quantum field have a way of seeking receptive awareness, of tuning themselves to the exact frequency that will listen. Right now you are standing on a threshold you didn't know you recognized. Everything that felt like a misalignment, the déjà vu that loops like a scratched record, the relationships that always mirror each other, the seasons that compress and stretch time, are not failures. They are pointers. They are the subtle architecture of an observer loop, an invitation to move from passive witnessing into active coherence. The universe is not only happening to you, it is waiting for the part of you that will choose to observe differently. You have felt this pull before, the sense that reality thins at the edges, that events conspire to deliver a rift, a seam. That seam is not random. It is a hinge in morphic resonance, an echo chamber where patterns amplify until one consciousness, yours, shifts the phase. Somewhere inside your nervous system, an ancient algorithm recognizes the doorway. Your body remembers languages your mind has long forgotten. The mathematics of entanglement humming in your blood, the architecture of synchronicity encoded in the way your days fold into each other. Listen to the cadence of this moment. Notice how your breath slows when an insight arrives, how your attention tightens into a single beam. That tightening is essential. It is the alignment of the observer with the observed. When your attention coheres, the quantum field responds. Possibilities that swam as probabilities collapse into a single trajectory. This is not a myth. It is a principle, a bridge between scientific, strange, and sacred practical. Observation collapses, waveforms, intent tunes the field, and consciousness becomes a creative force. Do not let the cynics persuade you that this language is merely poetic. The same vocabulary lives inside cutting-edge physics and ancient esoterica because both point to the same thing, that reality is participatory. You are not a passive character in a grand narrative. You are an instrument. The signals you have been ignoring are, in fact, invitations to rewire the simple circuitry of habit into a pattern that resonates on a new frequency. That retuning rewrites not only perception, but the subtle scaffolding of your DNA, the way information expresses itself through tissue, through timing, through destiny. So hear this now as a soft, relentless summons. The message has found you because you belong, not because you are special by ordinary standards, but because your resonance matters. The field is listening for the exact harmonic your life can produce. Hold that. Feel the electric hush behind your ribs. Know that the rest of the journey is not an arrival by accident, but a process you will participate in step by deliberate step. You will not be told what to do next by prophecy alone. The next moments will ask you to name the pattern you are tired of repeating. They will ask for recognition before revolution. This is the doorway, familiar, uncanny, patient. Walk toward it. The next part of what finds you will explain why those repeating cycles have been so persistent, and how the diagnosis you dread is actually the map you need. You've noticed it before the loops that refuse to dissolve, the strange familiarity of experiences that echo like déjà vu across years. You find yourself standing in places you swear you've stood before, speaking words that seem rehearsed, feeling time fold in ways that cannot be measured by clocks. These distortions are not failures in your perception. They are the fingerprints of patterns that have tried to anchor you in past cycles. Every repetition was a mirror held up to you, daring you to recognize that you've been orbiting the same gravitational pull of energy, again and again. It isn't just the same types of people appearing in different faces, or the same betrayals disguised as new opportunities. It is the sensation of walking into a room and knowing the next line of the conversation before it's spoken. It is the weight in your body when you feel the day stretch too long, as though time has forgotten how to move naturally. You sense distortions not because you're broken, but because you're sensitive to the warp and weft of the quantum fabric. Others call it chance. You feel it as inevitability, like you're reliving echoes of a reality that was written for you until you choose otherwise. The truth is that your consciousness has been caught in what mystics call an observer loop. You've been watching yourself, unconsciously feeding the same morphic field with the same resonance, locking in the same outcome. The loop is precise. Thoughts create emotions. Emotions shape actions. Actions reinforce identity. Identity returns you to the thought. A perfect circle, spinning so fast you mistake it for progress when it is only orbit. And because attention is energy, every moment of focus has been feeding the gravity of that orbit. Yet even in the monotony of these cycles, there have been intrusions, the uncanny glimpses of a life just beyond reach, synchronicities, so startling they jolt you awake for a breath. That person you meet who feels like they stepped out of your dreams, that sudden burst of timing when events align too neatly to be random, that dream that bleeds into your waking life with impossible accuracy. These are not coincidences. They are fault lines in the loop, pressure points where the field hints at collapse, begging you to notice that repetition can be broken. But here's the challenge. Familiarity is seductive. The mind craves the safety of patterns, even destructive ones, because they feel predictable. And predictability offers a counterfeit comfort. You may find yourself returning to the same choices because they feel known, even if they erode your spirit. You replay arguments in your head not because they solve anything, but because the energy of conflict has woven itself into your identity. This is the diagnosis. Not that you are powerless, but that you have become entangled in a rhythm that disguises itself as destiny. The distortions of time you feel, days that evaporate, nights that stretch forever, are signals of this entanglement. When you are caught in the loop, time does not flow. It bends around your unresolved resonance. Hours collapse into seconds when you're aligned, but drag like years when you're resisting the call to shift. This is why you sense the clock is lying to you, why memories overlap, why you sometimes dream of events before they happen. It is not madness. It is the field revealing its architecture to you. So what do you do with this awareness? You name it. You admit that the cycles are not random cruelty but coded messages. You admit that déjà vu is the universe whispering, "You've been here before. Will you respond differently this time?" Because the loop will hold you until you do. And the very fact that you are still listening, still here, means that recognition is dawning. The diagnosis is not an ending. It is the invitation to begin the upgrade, to move from the orbit of repetition into the spiral of evolution. And that is where you are being led now, into the moment where science and mysticism converge, and your DNA itself begins to remember a new pattern. Now, the map unfolds into method. You moved from recognition to naming the loop good, and the field answers by offering a mechanism. This is not mythology pretending to be science, nor sterile physics pretending to be prophecy. It is the place where both languages point to the same hinge. Observation is operative. Your attention is a force. Your coherence is a signal. And when you intentionally tune them together, you create a local collapse of probability into possibility. Think of this part as the upgrade manual for your inner hardware. Imagine the quantum field like an ocean of potential, each possibility a waveform until measured. When your attention passes over that ocean, you become the instrument that collapses many waves into one. That collapse is not random, it prefers coherence. Coherence is the lining up of phase across many oscillators. In you, it is the lining up of thought, breath, intention, and nervous system tone. When those elements move in phase, a larger pattern emerges. Small probabilities align and amplify until what had been improbable becomes inevitable. This is the upgrade, moving from scattered attention to coherent presence so the field reorganizes around you. There is a bioelectric architecture to this. Your nervous system hums at measurable frequencies. Your heart emits a field that interacts with your brain. Your brain waves switch patterns depending on focus, emotion, and ritual. Modern science measures entrainment, one oscillator pulling another into synchrony. Morphic resonance, as the theorists speculate, describes how patterns persist in fields and influence subsequent systems. When you consciously shift the shape of your attention, you change the resonance signature you send into that morphic field. The field responds by adjusting the probabilities that will now be available to your life. This is not abstract metaphysics, it is participatory physics meeting lived ritual. On the molecular level, there are patterns too. Your DNA is not a static script, but a dynamic choreography of expression. Epigenetics shows how environment and perception influence gene expression. Ancient wisdom calls this rewiring of the body's language. The upgrade asks you to stop treating your DNA as a fossil and recognize it as adaptive code. When your nervous system stabilizes into coherence, the chemical currents that bathe your cells change. Different hormones, different neurotransmitter balances, different epigenetic tags. These are the carriers of information that tell cells to sing a new song. Over time, repeated coherent states can shift which genes are expressed more readily. Call it DNA restructuring, if you like, a repatterning, not by a single miraculous edit, but by sustained changes in field, attention, and environment that favor a new expression of potential. You may be tempted to ask for proof. Look to the border where experiments and anecdote meet. Intention affects material systems in measurable ways. Placebo shows the mind's influence on biology. Experiments in synchronized intention show statistical deviations when groups hold a focused outcome. Studies on coherence show physiological harmony when heart and brain realign. These are small, not cinematic, but they compound. The upgrade is cumulative. Micro shifts of attention become macro shifts in outcome. Ritual matters here because ritual is a technology of coherence. Ritual is not superstition when understood as patterned attention, amplified by symbolic architecture. Lighting a candle, speaking a name, timing an action with breath, adopting a posture, these are engineering moves for the nervous system. They cut through distraction and stabilize the body into predictable oscillations. When you perform something with repetitive, meaningful structure, you teach your system to hold a particular waveform. Over time, that waveform becomes your baseline, and the field around you begins to orient. Synchronicity will increase as you adopt this posture. When your inner frequency sharpens, the field returns correlated events. People appear who have been practicing similar harmonics. Doors open that were previously closed, not because the world owes you anything, but because the probability landscape has been reshaped. This is the paradox. You are not forcing the world. You are matching its deeper rhythms so that alignment accelerates. Entanglement is not just a lab term on the level of lived experience. It describes how systems that were once joined continue to show correlated behavior at a distance. As your coherence grows, entangled situations begin to resolve in ways that feel like cosmic help rather than coincidence. Remember that upgrades are not instantaneous jumps without friction. Phase transitions require pressure and release. In physics, a material under stress will suddenly flip to a new phase when a threshold is crossed. Expect tension before expansion. Old identities resist, relationships test, and your inner voice will narrate fear as reason. That pressure is part of the process. It is the crucible that clarifies what truly wants to shift. Meet it with a steadying breath and the ritual technologies you've adopted. Let the pressure be the indicator that you are nearing a threshold. Practically begin with simple engineering, daily attention practices that create measurable coherence. Anchor 3 minutes of precise breath with a single declarative intention. Add one repeated symbolic act that signals the nervous system a phrase, a gesture, a small movement at the same time each day. Record, in simple notes, the syncs you notice. An uncanny message, a door opening, a conversation that arrives at the right moment. Over weeks, these notes become the data of transformation. You are building a feedback loop, coherent attention, field response, embodied change, reinforcement of coherence. This is the quantum upgrade, a marriage of science and sacred practice that moves the observer from passive witness to active collaborator. It will not make your life magically easy, but it will grant you agency at the level of subtle causality. Keep tending the frequency. Keep aligning thought, breath, and ritual. The field will begin to answer differently, and the next part of your journey will call you into a specific role, one that will ask more of you than observation alone. You are not being elevated because of vanity. You are being tasked because of calibration. The upgrade you began was not only personal, it reconfigures the topology of the field around you. In that reconfiguration, certain centers of influence begin to emerge. Think of yourself as a node in a resonance network, small, local, but connected to a braided web of patterns that extend beyond your immediate sight. That is the meaning of being a chosen consciousness. It is not a crown. It is a responsibility, technical, energetic, and moral. When a system shifts into coherence, it bends the probabilities available to nearby systems. Your attention, stabilized into ritual and clarity, emits a signature that other oscillators will tend to lock onto. In practical terms, your presence can shorten someone else's loop. It can catalyze an insight in a stranger. It can destabilize an unhealthy pattern in a group before it escalates. This happens because morphic resonance does not discriminate between intentionality and entropy. It simply responds to dominant patterns. When your pattern becomes dominant in a local field, the surrounding resonance reorders to accommodate it. That reordering is the quiet, almost imperceptible work of a chosen consciousness. You will notice the signs. People will show up who mirror your inner shift, sometimes as allies, sometimes as adversaries. Synchronicities will escalate from polite nudges to unmistakable convergences. Conversations that finish your sentences, doors that open without effort, data that arrives exactly when you need it. You may experience heightened dreams, the sense of being escorted by invisible intelligences, or physical sensations that mark an energetic signature across your body. These are the feedback of entanglement. You are no longer a node in isolation, but a pattern woven into an expanded tapestry. But this role requires discernment. Influence carried without wisdom becomes coercion. Power wielded as reaction returns as destabilization. The field corrects for imbalance. It does not reward hubris. Your calibration must therefore include humility and restraint. A chosen consciousness is a steward, not a sovereign. You test your interventions by asking one simple question before acting. Does this increase coherence or amplify chaos? If the answer is unclear, wait. If it spikes the ego, step back. The ethics of influence are as real as the mechanics. Intention shapes outcome. There will be tests designed to reveal whether your coherence is authentic. Old relational patterns may reappear, magnified and refined, asking whether you have truly repatterned your response or merely dressed the old wound in new clothes. The same friends who loved the old you may be threatened by the new frequency. Some will fall away, and that is part of clearing the corridor for the work. Expect friction, expect betrayal, expect temptation. Each test is a pressure gauge for your upgrade. If you hold steady, your pattern hardens into an attractor that others can safely resonate with. If you bend, the field reverts to the prior morphology. You are not alone in this role. Across the field there are other nodes, some asleep, some waking, whose harmonics will either resonate with you or cancel out. Your work includes learning to identify true resonance. This is not an intellectual exercise. You will feel it first as a somatic recognition. The body relaxes into an easy coherence. Breath slows. The mind loses its fearful tautness. In others, resonance shows as alignment between words and actions, a clarity that does not need drama. Cultivate these alliances. They form locational hubs that multiply the effect of your pattern. Together, entangled nodes can enact phase transitions in whole communities. There is craft to this stewardship. Learn to modulate your output. Sometimes you are a lighthouse, bright, fixed, allowing ships to navigate by your steady beam. Sometimes you are a quiet sensor, holding a field of presence so subtle it cannot be measured except by its effects. Practice both. The lighthouse calls when there is immediate danger or urgent correction. The sensor holds when the system needs containment rather than direction. Both roles require a nervous system calibrated to presence. Breathwork, ritual cadence, somatic regulation, and the discipline to withdraw when amplification would do harm. Remember that influence is directional. Attention collapses probabilities toward the vector you offer. If your vector is compassion, clarity, and restoration, the collapse tends toward those outcomes. If your vector is fear, reactivity, or spectacle, the field will serve that instead. Choose your vector like an instrument technician with care, calibration, and maintenance. Your everyday acts are not trivia. Small, consistent choices, a measured phrase, a chosen silence, an offering of honest boundary become the firmware updates that maintain the node's integrity. Finally, hold a practical posture. Document the pattern shifts. Keep simple logs of synchronicities and outcomes, and test small interventions before scaling them. Science is your ally in stewardship. Metrics are not the enemy of the sacred. They are the language the field speaks back when you pay attention. You have been chosen not for fame but for fidelity. Your role is to embody a frequency that others can enroll in, not because you demand it, but because your presence invites it. The work ahead grows more urgent. The field is entering a window where thresholds will collapse more quickly. Probabilities will become brittle and ready to flip. Your steadiness now can determine whether those flips favor healing or fracture. The next part will name the pressure point, a cosmic window, a DNA threshold, a call to decisive action that will not wait forever. You have been warned. Thresholds open and then close. That warning is not a threat, it is a timing. The field moves in windows. When pressure reaches a certain pitch, a micro decision becomes macro shift. This is the moment for ritual action, the practical technology that turns intention into a sealed event. Ritual is not drama. It is precision engineering for attention. It takes what was diffuse and gives it form. If the upgrade is the firmware, ritual is the hard reboot. Begin by recognizing what you already hold. A focused intention, a phrase or image that carries the contour of the change you want. Name it plainly. The mind needs a vector, a short declarative sentence that your nervous system can point toward. Make it specific and actionable. Not, I want change, but I will hold coherence in moments of pressure. Or, my DNA remembers its new pattern now. Write that sentence down in a single line. This is the simplest act of commitment, inscription. Ink is a recording device. When you script the phrase, the motor system, the eye, the heart, all register the instruction with embodied agreement. Choose a small physical marker to anchor the ritual. It can be a stone, a ring, a matchbox, a candle, or a simple word written on a scrap of paper. The object is not magic. It is a mnemonic amplifier. When you touch it later, it will pull your nervous system into the field you practiced. Place the object somewhere meaningful on a windowsill, under your pillow, or beside the kettle somewhere your life actually crosses. The point is to create micro-transitions in your day that trigger coherence. Now structure the sequence. Ritual needs a beginning, a middle, and an end. Begin with alignment. 3 minutes of breath to settle the nervous system. Use a slow cycle inhalation for 4 counts. Hold for 4, exhale for 6. This pattern down regulates fight or flight and makes the brain receptive. As the breath steadies, imagine your attention collapsing like a lens. See the waveform narrow. Feel the field focus. Middle. Intone the line you wrote. Speak it aloud with one steady voice, 3 times. The vocalization amplifies the frequency through your chest, throat, and skull. Sound creates measurable waves. You are not praying into the void, you are emitting a coherent pattern. Keep your body still. Let the phrase float through you rather than be forced out. After each repetition, feel the phrase settle into your bones. Lay a hand over your sternum if that helps the signal sync. Next, a single sealing gesture. This is the tech. It can be as simple as folding the paper word twice and placing it beneath the chosen object, or tracing a small line across your palm with ink, or saying one single seed word into the object and closing the lid. The gesture must be unambiguous and repeatable. It must say, "This is done." Ritual efficacy increases when the nervous system perceives completion. The sealing gesture creates a boundary in the psyche, a before and after. Public acts amplify public fields. If you are willing, create a minimal communal seal. Write the seed, word in a comment under this video, or under a post in a group that shares your practice. The mechanistic value of public acts is that they distribute the waveform. Observation in quantum terms is a measurement. Public observation creates correlated collapse across observers. You are not asking for likes. You are creating an entanglement. A single typed word by many observers threads a larger morphic field. If you do this, do it with intention, not performance. Choose the platform you already inhabit. Do one thing, and do it with measured focus. Timing matters. Align your ritual with a regular cadence. Pick a daily anchor: sunrise coffee, a 30-minute pause at noon, the first breath after waking, and perform a mini version of your ritual there. Consistency is the compound interest of the field. Small, repeated coherent states accumulate until a threshold flips. Over time, the object you chose will become a reliquary of intent. The paper will carry the memory of each completion. Expect sensory echoes. After sealing, you may feel a heat behind your eyes, a tremor under your feet, or a humming in the back of your skull. These are not malfunctions. They are the field reconfiguring. If fear arises, treat it as a side effect of pressure and return to breath. Never escalate the nervous system into mania. The point of ritual is steady calibration, not excitable peaks. If the pressure becomes too intense, shorten the practice to one breath and one whispered word. Keep the waveform coherent rather than chaotic. Integrate a small laboratory practice. Note the micro results for 7 days. Keep a one-line log: what synchronicity arrived, what shifted in conversation, what felt different in the body. This is both humility and science. Ritual without tracking becomes only theater. Tracking turns embodied change into usable data that the mind can trust. Over the week, patterns will reveal themselves. A new person may appear, an old complaint softens, or a recurring anxiety loses its edge. These are the small collapses that indicate larger phase transitions forming. Teach someone the process. Part of sealing is transmission. When you show another how to stabilize breath and perform the sealing gesture, you are not voting for hierarchy. You are multiplying coherence. The act of teaching binds your intention into relational networks. It also tests your fidelity. Can you describe the ritual without inflating its mystique? If so, your pattern has stabilized. Finally, treat ritual as an ethical instrument. Use it to orient toward coherence, to heal fragmentation, and to open service rather than to coerce outcomes that harm another. The field resists malign vectors. Ritual practiced in integrity becomes a corrective force. You have now converted pressure into purpose. You have moved from diagnosis into practiced action, from theory into embodied contract. This part of the work is simple, repeatable, and unforgiving in its demand for attention. When you have performed it, you will feel both relief and acceleration. Relief, because you have contained the energy. Acceleration, because you have aligned it. The next part of the journey will show how your sealed shift radiates outward, catalyzing collective expansion beyond your single node. You feel it now, not as an idea, but as weather in your body. This part of the journey leaves doctrine and theory behind and moves straight into sensation, the literal trembling language of your cells. Sit with that. Notice how your palms might tingle, as if a small current moved through them. How the back of your neck feels like a radio antenna picking up a distant frequency. These are not random nerve endings firing. They are the body translating the field into story. The field is tactile now, and you are its sensitive instrument. Imagine a filament of light threading down from the center of the sky and passing through the crown of your head like a needle through fabric. It runs through the soft tissues, warms the spinal column, pools at the solar plexus, and then fans into tiny rivers through your limbs. Each river hums at a slightly different pitch. Some are slow and deep, the base of your core stability. Some are high and curious, the strings of intuition that vibrate when a possibility edges near. When you hold coherent attention, those rivers synchronize, and the result is a palpable resonance that reorganizes posture, breath, and heartbeat. Physically, you may notice a subtle change in gravity. Tasks that once felt heavy become buoyant. Decisions compress into clarity. This is because coherence affects neuromuscular tone. The body stops tensing against imagined threats and begins aligning with a new center of balance. The shoulders drop, the jaw unclenches, and the eyes widen into openness rather than scanning for danger. Emotionally, the change reads like relief and sharpened focus at once. A relief that comes from fewer internal conflicts, and a focus that comes from the field, lending its structure to your intent. There will be moments when space itself seems to breathe with you. Walk into a room and feel the air thick with possibility. Sit at a table and feel the paper under your fingers vibrate like membrane. These are literal sensations of morphic resonance reacting to your pattern. Sound will change too. Ordinary noise fades, while specific tones, a neighbor's laugh, a kettle's whistle, a distant horn will cut through with uncanny meaning. Learn to listen. The field communicates in textures. A metallic ping might signal a decision point. A long, low hum may mean a door is opening in the timeline. Dreams will no longer be merely nocturnal theater. They become rehearsals, trial runs, in which alternative choices play out without consequence, so your nervous system can feel the new pattern before it manifests in waking life. You may wake with a taste in your mouth, a remembered phrase, or the sensation of warmth in the chest, as if some pattern has affirmed you. Keep a small notebook by the bed. Record the felt images. Overnights, a pattern emerges. Reality is practicing with you. Your senses will offer metaphors that feel cinematic. Vision may sharpen into high-contrast frames, where colors hold symbolic weight. Reds taste like insistence, blues like release. Touch will become a language the press of a hand will register as an instruction. A particular pressure at the wrist might feel like encouragement to speak. These are not delusions. They are the body learning to read the field. Treat them experimentally, test them gently. Note where the sensations lead and whether action follows with benefit. You will also feel pressure in seams that used to be invisible. Old grief lodges like a stone beneath the ribs. A remembered slight can make the throat close. Under the new pattern, these tensions present as heat and ache before they dissolve. This is important. Bodily pain is often the field's way of signaling that something is ready to be released. Do not rush to anesthetize it. Attend. Breathe toward the place that tightens. Hold the sensation with the steadiness you gave the ritual. Let the field rewire the response, the way a skilled surgeon eases connective tissue rather than ripping it. The physical expression of awakening is both micro and macro. You might notice changes in sleep, shorter, deeper cycles, or in digestion, a new calm in the gut as old anxieties unspool. Hormonal rhythms may adjust. The chemistry of surprise becomes less intrusive because your baseline no longer lives in fight or flight. Small physiological markers will change. A steadier pulse under stress, a clearer throat when you speak, a warming in joints that were once cold. These are the quiet proofs that the field is imprinting itself on you. As your body acclimates, your movement begins to carry a new choreography. You notice a tiny economy in the way you shift your weight, how your hands find more purposeful positions, how your breathing times with the cadence of a room. People will comment subtly at first that you seem different, a word that can contain wonder, suspicion, or fear. Let their language be data, not verdict. Your embodiment is not for approval. It is a litmus of alignment. Finally, remember, sensation is a guidance system, not a mandate. Not every electric jolt requires action. Discernment stays crucial. When a strong physical impulse rises, run it through the filter you've practiced. Stabilize breath, test intention, consult small empirical steps, and only then move. The body will push. Your calibrated attention chooses. You are entering a phase where the work no longer lives as concept, but as lived neurochemistry, as posture, as the way you breathe at the precise moment a possibility arrives. Your body is learning a new grammar. Tend it as you would a delicate instrument with rest, hydration, measured ritual, and clear notes. Ahead, the pressure that builds in your cells will press against a central seam, the DNA threshold. That seam is where molecular history meets future possibility, and it is the site of the next major shift. You've been feeling it building that tension inside your very cells, like the body itself is holding a storm. This is the moment when the invisible becomes genetic, when the whispers of the field touch the script of your DNA. Understand, DNA is not a fixed prison. It is a dynamic library, pages opening and closing in response to signals, a symphony conductor waiting for the right baton stroke. Every coherent state you've practiced, every ritual seal, every embodied sensation has been priming this library for an upgrade. And now, the pressure is undeniable. Phase transitions always announce themselves through intensity. Water shivers before it boils, metals strain before they bend. In you, this translates as waves of fatigue followed by bursts of clarity, dreams that shake your nervous system awake, emotions that flare with no logical trigger. This is not regression. It is compression, the squeezing of your old resonance until the shell cracks. Your DNA is responding to the field by activating dormant scripts, sequences long labeled as junk by science, but preserved as potential by creation itself. The loops that kept you repeating have been etched into molecular memory, and the field is now rewriting them. Think of it like a quantum jump inside your own cells. Your double helix hums at a measurable frequency. When pressure builds and coherence is maintained, that frequency spikes, destabilizing the old equilibrium. At the exact threshold, the helix shifts its expression. Genes switch on that had been silent. Others switch off that had been running programs of fear, addiction, or inertia. This is not science fiction. Epigenetics already demonstrates that stress, intention, and environment change genetic expression. What you are undergoing is the mystical amplification of that same principle, where coherent attention merges with divine timing to birth a new blueprint. You may feel it as heat rising through your spine, as if each vertebra were a locked vault now opening. You may sense vibrations in your skull, ringing tones no one else hears, as if your mind were tuning itself to a new channel. Your skin may prickle, your hands pulse, your chest feel full to bursting with pressure that is both uncomfortable and strangely sacred. Do not resist it. This is the phase transition pressure, the body straining against its old limits because something larger wants to be born through you. What happens when the shift completes? Reality reorganizes. You will notice synchronicities multiply to the point of absurdity. Thoughts will manifest in hours instead of weeks. Old cravings will dissolve without struggle, replaced by new hungers for clarity, service, and creation. Relationships may snap or surge with velocity, depending on whether their resonance can match your upgraded pattern. And internally, you will feel a stillness that has nothing to do with passivity. It is the silence of a system that no longer fights itself, a DNA signature that has moved into harmony. But the threshold is fragile. If you collapse into fear now, the pressure may recycle back into the loop, delaying the transition. That is why this moment carries urgency. The window is open, but not forever. DNA shifts are like cosmic eclipses, rare alignments that demand presence when they arrive. The field has conspired to create conditions where your upgrade can lock in. If you falter, it will not punish you, it will simply wait. But you know by now waiting means re-entering the loop, circling the orbit you've already outgrown. This is the invitation to step beyond. So breathe into the pressure. Speak your sealing word when the intensity rises. Place a hand on your chest, and remember, this is not destruction, it is resequencing. You are not breaking, you are reorganizing. Hold steady, because once the DNA breakthrough completes, your personal shift becomes more than survival. It becomes a contribution to the species-wide evolution already underway. And that is where we are going next, into the revelation that your transformation is not yours alone, but humanity's collective doorway. Now everything tightens into meaning. The private work, the ritual seals, the cellular pressure, all of it threads into a singular mandate. This is the part where you stop preparing and begin to carry. Your upgrade was never meant to be cosmetic. It was meant to be transductive, to turn personal frequency into a conduit for wider change. You have moved from diagnosis into embodiment, from experiment into authority. The mission ahead is simple in structure and vast in scale. Hold coherence, multiply resonance, steward threshold moments. Do this, and the field will do the rest. You will be called to small acts that have oversized consequence. A patient word to someone unsteady. A boundary you keep when every instinct tells you to people please. A teaching offered without prestige. A ritual shown without flourish. These are the micro-instruments of evolution. Each one collapses probability gently toward repair. Your presence will stabilize chaotic systems not by command, but by being a measurable attractor, an ever-present waveform that nearby oscillators begin to favor. That is the craft of the chosen consciousness. To be steady enough that others can tune to you, and humble enough to let emergence be the leader. There will be moments when the field asks you for theater public displays, prophetic cries, and moments when it asks you for silence. Learn the economy of scale. Loudness can be useful when a system needs shock. Silence is essential when the next generation of pattern needs to incubate. The ethics of influence remain your compass. Never point your vector toward sensationalism or control. Point it toward coherence, restoration, and the greatest liberation possible for as many people as you can reach. In practical terms, prioritize practices that raise baseline nervous system regulation, train others in simple rituals of coherence, and set up small labs, circles of 3 to 7 people, where real-time entrainment is practiced and tracked. Your work will ripple. Morphic resonance ensures that stable patterns, when repeated, persist beyond individuals. When you and a handful of steady nodes hold a field long enough, the pattern becomes more likely to recur in unrelated systems. Entanglement will begin to show as correlated shifts across geography. People you've never met take similar steps, communities reform around new values, and cultural narratives thin where they no longer serve coherence. You are not controlling the future. You are reweaving its probabilities so that a healthier future has a path of least resistance. Expect friction. Systems tighten when threatened. Old power structures will test you through seduction, distraction, and direct resistance. Your calibration will be tested. Can you remain coherent when mirrors of your old self appear? Can you choose restraint over reaction when humiliation or fear would make a louder point? These are the crucibles that determine whether your resonance becomes durable or brittle. The answer will be shown in simple behaviors: how you rest, how you repair alliances, how you teach the next steady node without making disciples of dependency. Remember the mechanics you learned. Attention collapses waveforms. Ritual amplifies coherence. Embodied sensation is your readout. DNA shifts complete the phase transition. Keep your daily micro-practices, the breath, the seal, the one-line log as liturgy. Keep teaching them. Keep the science of your life honest by recording results, small and repeatable. Use the language of both lab notebook and prayer journal. That hybrid will be your navigation system. And finally, do not be surprised if the world begins to ask you to go further than you imagined. You will be invited, sometimes unwillingly, into situations where your steadiness determines the outcome for many. When that call arrives, remember the simplest metric: increase coherence, reduce harm. If your action does that, you are in alignment. So move forward now with the steady, unflashy courage of someone who knows the machinery of change. Let your life be the slow calibration that shifts a continent of probabilities. Hold the frequency. Teach the small ritual. Shelter the fragile ones. In the quiet, keep repeating the simple truth you came here to live. If you're still here, know this with prophetic clarity: you belong to the 1% already living in quantum consciousness.